Yeah, he's trying to get back out there with them. Oops. You guys are good? You're good? Grandkids are good? Oh, fun. Oh, fun.
Hi. Good. How you doing? That's good. Yeah. Oh, good. Just gonna ask you, so where?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Abington Heights regular school board meeting of March 16th, 2022. Would everyone please rise and pledge the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. O'Day, may we have roll call?
Mr. Abdullah,
Here.
Mr. Azar,
Here.
Mr. Fleming,
Here.
Mrs. Henderson,
Here.
Mrs. Karam,
Here.
Mr. Medensky,
Here.
Mr. Robeson,
Here.
Mrs. Tierney,
Here.
Mr. Acker,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for the evening?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Abdullah,
Yes.
Mr. Azar,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Karam,
Yes.
Mr. Medensky,
Yes.
Mr. Robeson,
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney,
Yes.
Mr. Acker,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meetings of February 16th and the work session of March 2nd?
So moved. Second.
On the motion, are any corrections? Roll call, please.
Mr. Azar,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Karam,
Yes.
Mr. Medensky,
Yes.
Mr. Robeson,
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney,
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah,
Yes.
Mr. Acker,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, are there any board reports for the evening?
The AEIO had their March meeting yesterday morning at 8 o'clock. We approved funds for the Kuiper Award, which is an award that the AEIO has given to a teacher who fills out the criteria and really does a great job in enhancing some type of classroom activity, and they're awarded funds in the fall first teacher in service. We also approved funds for our middle school music lab for them to get keyboards and headphones. We approved for our computer science club class at the high school to do a competition, so we gave them funds to enter the contest. And we also approved funds for the high school to get equipment, safety equipment, and to also do hall room passes that they've been, I guess, piloting this year, and we're helping them to fulfill those needs by funding it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tierney. Any other board reports? Okay, the next would be our student representatives. Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you? As all winter sports have officially ended, here are some of the final reports. The wrestling team won the District 2 AAA championship. There were also District 5 champions, and the 9 wrestlers qualified for regionals. They went on to take third at regional tournament, and from there, 5 wrestlers qualified for the state tournament, and Luke Sirianni finished 7th and was the only wrestler to medal. The girls' basketball team just concluded their season as district champions. They lost in the second round of state playoffs by 1 point. Spring sports, as of last week, have officially started, and some teams had their first scrimmage of the season today. There is also a powerlifting meet on Sunday, March 20th, in the main gym of the high school. The mock trial team members were also district champions once again, and their regional championship is tonight. If they win, they will advance to the state tournament. The Spring Fling Dance is scheduled for March 25th at the high school and will go from 7 to 10 p.m. The third quarter is coming to an end very quickly, and it will end on April 4th. Lastly, SAD will be holding the Teachers versus Students basketball game on April 14th before students leave for spring break. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Schaefer, we're moving right along. It's time for the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you very much. Before I start my report, I want to send my congratulations on behalf of the district and board to our wrestlers, our girls basketball team in the mock trial for just a fantastic winter that we had. Much longer than other schools, and we really appreciated it. And it's just a reflection of their hard work, dedication, and persistence, which is something we'll be talking about momentarily on the academic side. I would also like to acknowledge something that you're noticing a little different tonight. And I speak now as a parent. When I can't figure something out, I have now realized that I need to go to my teenage children to get the answer. And so I knew that the answer to our technological difficulties at our board meetings lied in the hands of our high school students. So if you're at home watching, the picture is probably much more crisp. You're going to be able to see everybody clearly and hear them much better. So I want to thank our high school video production team. They do this voluntarily. They're absolutely fantastic. So kudos to that group that's here today.
Dr. Schaefer, not to break in, but didn't they practice on you?
They did. They did practice on me at WVIA. So we're now comfortable with the equipment. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Every month I've focused in on one piece of academic data, and I always preface this presentation by saying it's just one piece to the puzzle. And like a really good recipe, it's not just one item. It requires a lot from our parents and families, a lot from our students, a lot from our teachers. And I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we take a look at tonight's data. This data is from the National Student Clearinghouse that I'll be talking about today, and it's free. It doesn't cost us anything, and it allows us to track the post-secondary patterns of our Abington Heights graduates. And as I go to slide 2, at the end of March here, that we're focusing in on post-secondary data, and then what you can expect in April is we'll start to talk about science, social studies in our curriculum plan, and then in May we'll be talking budget. Okay, so you have an idea of what's to come. Next slide. So once again, I want to start by surfacing our goals, and that is keeping the student staff safe, providing the best in-person education experiences possible for our children. And then I added something for tonight, and that is to create and maintain a dedicated K-18 vision. And we hear a lot about K-12 in the education space, and that is not how I think about it as an educator. I see Abington Heights students as ours until 6 years out. I want to know that they have been successful, that we have prepared them for work or post-secondary education. What you'll also find as an area for growth with us is that we have not done a great job tracking our students that go out into work or use their certifications earned at the high school or at Lackawanna CTC. So that is something that we will work on. so that I can provide that data to you, because I would propose that that is just as important as well. And we will follow our students till that 18th year, and I will report out on that data. Again, I say that as a parent and not a superintendent. I want to know that the school district provides for an excellent education so that my son and my daughter, your sons, your daughters, are prepared for what's next. That's our job. Our graduates provide us with feedback, and if we don't look at that feedback, then I think we're not doing our job. I mentioned that this information is from the National Student Clearinghouse, and this is the only repository out there that collects such a robust data set. So you can expect to get this year in and year out as we track the progress of our students. So I get to our first slide, and this is all publicly available. I put it out if you haven't seen it on the website. It's a little easier to read than what you're seeing above my shoulder here. But what you see here in this first slide is the percentage of graduating Abington High School Heights students enrolling in college immediately after graduation. And it's 76%, 72% at a 4-year, and 5% at a 2-year. And we have 8 years of data, and over those 8 years, that average is about 80%. And you can see it follows a very similar trend. I'm interested to see what happens in the next 2 years. 2020 and 2021 were very different years for students matriculating to college or any post-secondary opportunities. In many cases, they matriculate at home. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. The next slide I titled, Where Do Comets Enroll? 59% of our students enrolled in in-state institutions, with 17% from out of state. And when you take a look at the graph, you'll see that it's a very similar trend across all 8 years. The next slide is important in that I talk a lot about pre-college success indicators. There are characteristics of students and their performance in school that are highly predictive of how they will fare later on. And it is incumbent upon us to pay attention to those indicators and to let those indicators inform and guide our discussions with parents and students about what opportunities there are after school. And some examples include the intensity of your high school curriculum. And I have a note here that I got from Forbes, and I've looked in other online reports, and it's very similar. It says 80% of students with a 3.5 to a 4.0 unweighted high school grade point average graduate with a bachelor's degree within 6 years, compared with only 49% of students with a 2.0 to a 2.9. I also know that students that take math beyond Algebra 2 are twice as likely to graduate with a bachelor's degree in 6 years. Grades, SAT scores, these are all predictors in some way, shape, or form. And it's important for us to make sure that we monitor those success indicators. At our last board meeting, we talked about the high school curriculum of study. And we talked about how robust that was and what it offered. And I would submit that as evidence as to why we're seeing our students persisting in earning college degrees, because we understand that the rigors of a high school curriculum are helpful in a post-secondary institution, as well as dual enrollment courses. And you'll remember we've highlighted that in the last 2 presentations about what our high school offers. We may see declining participation in AP tests, however, we're seeing increases in dual enrollment. They're both early success indicators. At the next slide, I say persistence is key, because it is. And it's our job to know the early success indicators, to monitor them, and to respond. What you can't see, I don't think, in small writing on that slide, this is from a report from the National Research Center. It says persistence and retention, July 8th, 2001. I'm going to read this. 74% of first-time freshmen fall 2019 returned to college for their second year. This rate represents a pandemic-related, unprecedented one-year drop of 2 percentage points in this important early success indicator. There are some metrics out there that when it drops 1% or 2%, it's a big deal. This is one of them that they monitor over time. In my next slide, I talk about that again. Students that are full-time, that second-year persistence rate, which means that students who return to college after their first year, that's really important. Many times, if you're a student that's not prepared to go to school, they struggle that first year, and they drop out. And students that drop out, that have student loans, are 100 times more likely to default on those loans. That's why, once again, it is incumbent upon us as public educators to make sure that we prepare our students for post-secondary education, and to prepare our parents as well for what that means. So this next slide, I say everything that I just said to say over the past 8 years, 95% of AHHS graduates who attended college returned for a second year. That persistence rate is 15% higher. Depending on how you look at it, it could be 20% higher than the national average. We have 95% of our students returning for that second fall. That says a lot about our families. It says a lot about our students. It says a lot about our teachers. And most of all, it says a lot about our students. And I realize I was just redundant. I totally forgot I said them first. So that they get a double pat on the back. They continue to outperform national and local trends. The national average is 80.9, and the Pennsylvania system of higher ed is 76.1. And as a graduate from Penn State, it's important for us to acknowledge that when we're talking to our parents, that we talk about persistence rates and what we know about some of our higher ed institutions in Pennsylvania. Not all are the same. There are certain characteristics in programs in colleges and universities that do a better job retaining students, supporting students. And that's important to acknowledge, and it's important to talk about. And that's why we start to collect this data, so we can have some honest conversations and put our students, our comments, in the best place possible to be successful. The next one, when I was a counselor, I'd get this question all the time. Well, hey, Chris, private's better. They do such a better job retaining students. Not here. Persistence rates are almost identical regardless of the institution type for our common grads. And as you can see, they're at the top there, 95%. And that was the average over 8 years. This isn't a blip. When you do the right thing consistently, you get great results. When you do the reps right, and you get great results. Who's more at risk of not returning? Nationally and locally, we know that student persistence rates are lower for two-year institutions. And what you see in the line graph below, it's somewhat orangish, is our results for students attending 2 years. Now, the N count, or the population of each one of those 8 years, the highest number of students reported going to a 2-year institution was 21. The lowest was around 10. So when you see that dip in 2016, we had 10 students that were attending a 2-year school, and 6 did not return for that second year. We know, again, early success indicators. If we know that there is a high likelihood of students dropping out going to a 2-year college, then we need to think about what programming looks like for students that are choosing that. What type of support do we offer those students and parents before they go, as well as during? So I said that, during. So if you graduate and you're a Comet and you're at a 2-year school, then we should be thinking about programs and workshops that we offer here to help support our families and students so they can persist. The next is 6-year graduation rates. So the class of 2014 is the earliest data set that we have. They provide us with 8 years. 69% of the class of 2014 completed a degree within 6 years. Class of 2015, 76%. Those are very good percentages, and I'll talk about that a little later on. So now what you see is taking a little bit of a closer look at the class of 2014 and 15. And what I've written is that a majority of these graduates are going to complete programs within 4 years. So if I take a look at the class of 2015, which is to my right, that yellow-orangish box is 53%. So that's 53% graduated within 4 years. And then, so I have my trifocals on, but you know what? They just don't do a good job. So I'm not even going to try to figure out the number. But 13%, add that on to the 4, it was 6 years, okay? Or 5 years. Okay, 66. So what I take away here is I'm monitoring 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year. What we want is a majority of our students to graduate within 4 years. There's a recent UCLA survey done by UCLA to incoming freshmen, and something like 90% of incoming freshmen said that they would graduate in 4 years. The national average is around 40%. So there is this belief that we're going to graduate in 4 years. And then you get there and something happens. We know this. So this is an important metric to look at. What we have here is a class of 2015. And I'm not even going to attempt to read this with my, my poor glasses on that I talked about. But the summary is that we're persisting. 255 students in 2015 graduated from Abington Heights High School, and 195 earned a degree by 2021. So when I started off by talking about a K through 18 vision, that's what I'm looking at. So when I talk to Andy Snyder, I'll say, it's 2021, it's okay to stop having nightmares about the class of 2015, because you're going to be responsible for them 6 years out. Thinking about that, what can we offer the students? He's hearing this for the first time now. New to college enrollments are low 2 years post-graduation. Again, this is conventional wisdom. When I think about my time as a counselor, when I'm working with a student or a family, they would say, Mr. Schaefer, it's okay, I'm just going to take a year off. I'm just going to work and I'm going to go back to school. And I would say, well, the data doesn't support that. Maybe you do, and I'm here for you if you do. Okay? What is it that we can do to get you there? If this is your goal, what can we do to make that happen? And we see this time and again in the data. We don't have any data that supports that, hey, kids that say they're doing this are jumping back in a year after. We're not seeing it. We can track that. The percentage of no longer enrolled and not graduating appear to jump in year 3. So this is something that we talk about at the high school level now. If we know that we have a higher percentage of students not returning in their 3rd or 4th year, then again, what does that outreach look like? What can we do to have a strong alumni network to help support you? And I'm going to be a homer again and give a Penn State example. Because when I went to Penn State, my family made sure I knew of every kid that graduated from Penn State or was attending Penn State that I did not know that lived there. And they may give me a ride home on a certain holiday, or they may reach out to me, and I really didn't think much of it as a 17-year-old kid. But now, decades later, I'm thinking that was the right strategy. And that was my mom's strategy.
Go Mom.
And she wasn't a counselor. The longer we take in schools, the more money it costs. And this one was striking to me, but at what age can a 4-year graduate expect to break even relative to cumulative earnings with high school graduates? So that's assuming high school graduates start out the world of work at 18 years old. They're making money at 18. They're making money at 19, 20, 21, 22. And the answer is 30 to 33. Paying debt off takes time. And again, this goes back to having discussions with our families and students. How might we better inform our students about debt? Okay? And this goes right back to what I talked about, persistence. Graduating in 4 years versus 6 years can very easily be $80,000. So it's important to talk about those risks. 10% of borrowers owe $80,000 or more, comprising 45% of total federal education loans. 55% of our 2020 bachelor's degree recipients held an average debt of $28,400. So I think about that. $28,400 average bachelor's debt, okay? And 23% of outstanding federal loans were held by borrowers who were 50 years or older. Those struck me because, again, I'm thinking about how are we talking to our students and families about that, the importance of staying on track and making sure you graduate on time. And it seems really easy to fill out a form and then 6 weeks later get your federal student loan. But to talk about how long that takes to pay that debt off. And so what does this mean for us? It means that we're going to take a look at this data as much as possible, provide workshops for our parents and students, survey our graduates to see how prepared they were for post-secondary education, to examine how we're preparing or guiding our students that are in the 2-year workforce, and then consider engaging graduates in workshops and learning activities. So I just took 16, 17 minutes talking about the importance of post-secondary education relative to earning a college degree. I spent an hour today in our masonry class, in our automotive class. And I wish I was here telling you that next month I'm going to be bringing you data about our trades. And we don't have it. And we should have it. So this is an area that we need to focus on. I've told the board privately that these are programs that we need to invest in. And I'm saying publicly, these are programs that we need to invest in. And we will continue to do so. We will talk to these students that are in some of our trades programs, whether they're here at Abington Heights or whether they're at Lackawanna CTC. And we're going to come back with some data because it's important to know how our students are faring out there and if we're preparing them. And I'll just give you a short story about that. I'm sitting in the automotive bay and I'm having a talk with a teacher, and he points out this young man who running around looking like he was leading the show, right? You can kind of spot that. And he said, he's on it. He works at night in the shop and he does all these things, and then he comes in. He's going to get all the certs. he's going to go out and get that job and be set. And I said, that's fantastic. And I wish I had a way to capture it besides having to come to you and talk to you about it. So that's something that we need to have a better handle on. And I also wanted to frame this as, while I'm talking about this, I want you to know that we will not forget about the trades, and that is an area that we need to invest in. So with that said, that's my presentation.
Dr. Schaefer, thank you very much. Very interesting. The next item is public participation. As I think you all know, we ask you to take 3 minutes. When you come up, please state your name and where you live. The first person is Amy Scandell.
Good evening. I've missed a couple of meetings. It's good to see everyone's faces. Yay. So that's all done. I did read your presentation, Dr. Schaefer. Thanks for that. And you answered my question. I still came up because my name was on the list. But the trades are huge and close to my heart because you may have met my son today in masonry. He's getting 140% in masonry. He got 100% in automotive. Loves it. He already knows he wants to go to CTC, and I think that's a great, focus. And with that said, I know English teachers, math teachers are like, well, you're going to need to know this for college. You're going to need to know this for college. And he gets frustrated. And he can write, and I'm not making it just about my son, about other kids too. The teachers do need to, say, hey, if you go to trades, put that in there, because you kind of feel like, well, I'm not, going to go to college maybe. I'm going to do a different thing. Maybe I don't need to know this for English. But it seems like the teachers at Abington, because, your stats showed that four-year colleges are kind of the thing that Abington graduates strive for. But, a trade, they can be making, the money very quickly out of school and, own their own business, maybe go back and get a business degree and start their own business. So I appreciate that you acknowledged that we do need more data and more investment on the trades, because there's a lot of great schools around here. So thank you. Yeah.
Mrs. Scandell, I'd just also like to add to that in our interviews for prospective superintendents, the trades were one of the questions we asked about, and I have to say Dr. Schaefer really hit it out of the park and talked about mentoring and having our young people get out and see what work is all about, specifically so that when they get to that point, they're able to make better decisions for themselves and hopefully for their family. Next would be Leslie Peters.
Hello, I'm from South Abington Township, and I have 2 kids at the high school. I am here with a few other parents to create awareness for and seek basic funding for our powerlifting team. The program, I believe, is one of our district's best kept secrets. It's a vibrant, co-ed, competitive program that's been around for 35 years under Coach Claude Welcome, and it's had absolutely incredible success. We've had 7 national champions, the first a girl in 2011, and 6 more since then. This year, we have 39 girls and boys on the team, and amazingly, 12 of them qualified for next week's High School Powerlifting National Championship in Chicago. This is the greatest number of students we've had qualify in a single year, but it remains a pay-to-play sport. The team has no uniforms. Students buy their own singlets, knee sleeves, wrist wraps, belts, squats. Each lifter pays an entry fee, which runs about $40 per meet. Although the team fundraises, the amount raised only covers a fraction of our overall costs and mainly helps defray just a small portion of expenses associated with traveling to nationals. Consider this. At last month's state championship at Parkland High School in Allentown, we were the only school out of 11 that had no school uniforms. To put that in perspective, out of 225 lifters from Hershey, Parkland, Jim Thorpe, Central York, to name a couple, 17 students were without uniforms, and they were all Abington Heights. Our boys came in second place in that event, and all 7 girls placed third place or better. And they were standing on the medal podium, wearing a mishmash of singlets, while their peers from other schools were proudly wearing their school name on their chest. If you haven't had a chance to read the email I sent last week, and I know a number of you have, and I appreciate a lot of the responses, you can find a breakdown of the funds that we're asking for and what they'll be used for. Our plan is to continue to fundraise to help national-bound competitors with a portion of their travel expenses. As you can imagine, that's a big expense. But we're asking you to fund team uniforms and meet entry fees so our kids feel like their sport is supported and respected like every other sport in this district. Thank you so much for listening to me this evening and considering this request.
Thank you very much. Melissa Galanskis? I'm sorry about that.
It's fine. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Leslie did a great job. I'm here to talk about the powerlifting team, and Leslie knocked it out of the park. Really, what I just wanted to add is the personal level. My son Yanni is a freshman in the district, and he joined about a year ago, and it's done amazing things for not only his body image, but his confidence. Coach Claude is able to instruct on such a personal level, and he brings such enthusiasm for the sport that it's truly impressive. If you get the chance to come out on Sunday and see what it's all about, because I had no clue. I just didn't want my son in traction when he first said he was joining powerlifting, and I was thinking, oh my God. But it has done wonders, and we're just here tonight to ask for your support. These kids really need to be recognized for what they're able to accomplish, and Coach Claude, who better to learn from? I mean, he's a world-class bodybuilder, and we're so lucky to have him and have had him for 35 years. So thank you so much for listening to us, and I hope that you're able to help us out and support the kids. They really deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Galankas, you may not know that Coach Welcome is also a very good soccer coach, and you can ask him about that.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Dr. Schaefer, do you want to add anything on this?
I'd just like to say I did receive the email. I think I replied back, did a little homework, and I was able to speak with the board briefly today, and we still need to talk some more. But that's something that we'd be strongly considering, is that the uniforms and some entry fees. Given the history of our powerlifting team and what they do for our students.
Any other public comments? Okay, next item will be our action and discussion items. And the first item is to request the board approve the bills. So can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Karam,
Yes.
Mr. Medensky,
Yes.
Mr. Robeson,
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney, Mr. Abdallah,
Yes.
Mr. Azar,
Yes.
Mr. Acker,
Yes.
9-0.
Next would be to request the board to approve the treasurer's report. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Dr. Medensky, would you, you did.
We started the month of February with a cash balance of $25,160,282. Our monthly revenues were $2,571,017. Locally, it was a little over $1 million, and the state was about $1.2 million. So net disbursements for the month were $7,409,389 for a cash balance at the end of March of $20,321,910.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Karam,
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
The
Mr.
next would be the personnel report, Dr. Schaefer.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask the board to consider approving the personnel report, letter C, items 1 through 5.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask the board to consider approving the request to approve the March volunteer list.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask the board to consider a motion to approve revised board policy 616, payment for bills. This is the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, ask the board to consider a motion to approve the consulting agreement with Hire to Inspire Consulting LLC.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
I
Mrs. Tierney.
have a question. Dr. Schaefer, can you elaborate a little bit on this consulting company, please?
Sure. We are losing our special ed director and gaining another special education director. And in Pennsylvania, you have to give notice, and schools are able to hold personnel for 60 days. So what we've done is we've hired a consultant who will work with us on an hourly basis if we need some consultation. This isn't a full-time consult, but if we have questions as we wait for the new special education director to come in, that we can call her and get some professional advice.
Thank you.
Other questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I ask the board to approve letters G and H, which are settlement agreements between Abington Heights School District and student 6A and student 7A.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
No. And looking at the settlement terms, the attorney's fees for this one particular attorney, the G and H are totally different, but the fees are the same. So I'm calling into question the fees, and that's why I'm voting no.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1.
Mr. Acker, I ask the board consider a motion to authorize the administration to advertise and seek proposals for a district-wide facilities study.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, excuse me, before I call for roll call, I'd like to compliment the administration for pulling this together, and also for the Facilities Committee and Mr. Fleming and his group for doing a great job getting us ready to do this. With that, I'd ask for roll call.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, asks the board consider a motion to approve the 2020-2021 auditor's report.
So moved.
Second?
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask the board to consider approving the PDE signature resolution.
So moved.
Second?
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Medensky?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, we have some informational items only and various uses of district-wide facilities. Is there any new business? Mrs. Henderson?
I just wanted to bring up, I had a couple of parents and community members reach out to me to express concerns regarding pickup at the middle school. I know Mrs. Leonard has on multiple occasions asked parents to not arrive before 2:15 to allow buses to leave the parking lot. It's a continuous problem. I know parents will start lining up. I was there today at 1:30 and cars were completely lining the entrance. After the entrance is completely gridlocked, then parents are lining up on both sides of Newton Ransom Boulevard. So basically what happens is it bottlenecks and then there's gridlocks. And there's a lot of people that are concerned that if for some reason we would need emergency vehicles to get into the parking lot, they would be unable to do so. Same thing is true of trying to get, emergency vehicles through in either direction on Newton Ransom Boulevard. So I just think, I know another point that was brought up was that there's students out there at recess at that time. I believe it's 6th grade that is outside, and we have probably close to 40 or 50 cars lined up. So it's, a huge safety issue on several levels. And I know, like I said, Mrs. Leonard has asked repeatedly for parents not to come until the buses leave. And I believe that the police have even been consulted with in Newton Ransom, and nothing has changed. So I just wanted to bring that up so we can discuss it and kind of troubleshoot as a board.
Any other comments or thoughts on it, Mrs. Tierney?
Not on that, but I just want to comment on it's really nice to see a page and a half of different requests for building usage. We're all open again, and it's so nice to see all of our facilities and buildings being used by the community. So just compliment the district on that.
I do want to address Ms. Henderson's comment in that I do have some pictures from outside the middle school today that I printed out for all board members downstairs regarding the bottlenecking, and I'll be out tomorrow. However, I am seeing it more as not bottlenecking as much as just blatant dangerous situations, and we have cars on the opposite end side of the road literally driving in front of school buses. We'll be contacting the South Abington Police. We'll work with them. We'll also be working with our parents, but lining up 1 hour before dismissal is not safe for anybody. And I understand the importance of wanting to pick up your child. However, we need to think about the safety of our faculty and our students and our staff. And we'll work with the middle school as well as our township police, and we will try to come up with the best answer to this situation, short of building a new road in there in a short time frame.
Okay, thank you. I just also wanted to note, other parents of elementary schools, I know South Abington and Waverly parents mentioned that, again, like parents are coming a full hour ahead of time, but clearly it's not as big of an issue just because of the structure of the buildings, but it's just something to note that it's not just the middle school, but I think that's probably the biggest issue right now.
I know they have a similar problem at Waverly in the mornings, where they're basically lining up on both sides of Waverly Road, and it is dangerous.
Have we seen bus ridership increase since, in the last few weeks, since the masking requirements have gone away?
I'll need to check with Susan Wallace on that.
Other thoughts? Other new business? Any old business?
Yes, Mr. Acker, just to FYI to the public, the Technology Committee meeting was last week, and our focus was really on our website. So we looked at 3 vendors that gave demos on some of the features and functions that we can improve on. Our next meeting is likely going to be the 22nd of March, I believe, on Tuesday. And what we're really going to do is work through some of the requirements of what we think a good website should have, look at the timeline, and look at putting out potentially an RFP for the 3 vendors and get some pricing. So the timeline in general, this is a very first cut at this, would be hopefully, by the time students get back in school in September, we'll have a nice updated, upgraded website. So thank you for the committee members who attended. We had Dr. Vitale, Jim Marabelli, Dr. Schaefer, and committee members, Mr. Abdallah, Mrs. Karam, and Mr. Medensky. So thank you.
Is that something that students could get involved in?
Yes, and actually, we actually talked about that, and we also added, there's going to be a survey going out, and we tossed in a couple questions, usability questions about, what are people, like from a user, there's 2 perspectives. It's a good question. A user perspective, meaning, what are people going to most frequently, so we can put it out in front of them. But then also, I think what you're getting at is students participating in the design and the development and the testing and the user testing and even the support and operations of it. So yes, we did talk about that.
That's great. Any other old or new business? I'd call for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Thank you all, and to the public, thank you very much for participating. Have a nice evening.